Hello, this is Sarah Brash. Welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to try something. I have my Patreon and I have 4 patrons and I'm so excited and happy about that. Thank you so much. And they've pledged $37 a month to me, and that's amazing, and I love you so much. Thank you so much for that. So the thing about my Patreon is that I guess I have been doing introductory videos on my YouTube and then doing extended videos on my Patreon. And that's cool, but I thought I would just try. My Patreon isn't really about having like this super exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. You can read my blog posts, and that's basically the same content as is in my YouTube videos, as is in my Patreon videos. Yes, my Patreon videos are longer and more extensive, but you get sort of the main point in the intro videos on YouTube. And my Patreon's hasn't been, I haven't had it that long, but it's not about having this super exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. It's just really just about, it's another way for people to support me. Just like my GoFundMe, my PayPal me, my Venmo. It's just another way for people to support me. My YouTube, if people want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be amazing. So it's really just another way for people to support me. So what I'm going to try to do, what I thought I would do, is just post a handful of shorter videos tonight, and just post the same videos on Patreon as I do on YouTube, and make the Patreon videos just accessible to the public, and just see if that gets more people to go to my Patreon and hopefully become patrons and pledge. And then maybe if I get some more patrons there, then I will I'll go ahead and do some more, or I won't stop doing exclusive content for the Patreon, but I just thought that I would just try this and see if that helps, direct more people to the Patreon. So it's really, I just see it as another way for people to support me and to donate to my legal fund, to my living and medical expenses fund. It's just another way for people to support my effort to, fight for justice for all of us, to rebuild my life, to end cancel culture and trial by Twitter. So it's just another way for people really to support me. So anyway, so in this video, I want to talk about Twitter in this video. So everyone's, sort of up in arms and really excited and really distraught, but everyone's just kind of like, losing their minds a little bit over the fact that Jack Dorsey has now stepped down as Twitter's CEO. And it sounds like he's really not going to have a role in the company anymore at all. And he's just going to be the CEO of Square, I guess, from now on. And then immediately thereafter, Twitter implemented a new safety and support policy, which is that you basically can no longer post images and video of private citizen nobodies without their consent. And this very, very clearly and obviously, I'm going to have a caveat to say about this, but this seems to be very obviously a measure to make sure that what was done to me on Twitter never happens to anyone else ever again. Because basically what happened to me is that I was subjected, obviously, to cancel culture and trial by Twitter without due process. I almost died many times over, almost killed myself many, many times over, had to go into hiding for more than 3 years for my personal safety, was deluged by death threats and rape threats and the most grotesque and reprehensible, abuse and harassment. Basically was, depersoned, unpersoned, and basically just repeatedly over the past more than 3.5 years now, just incessant waves of mobbings to near suicide and campaigns to basically drive me to suicide, especially by Twitter blue checkmark public figures who have just incessantly mobbed me, abused me, harassed me, tried to destroy me, called for me to be expelled, disbarred, fired. Right now, there are many campaigns, including on Twitter, including by blue checkmark public figures, including by Richard Painter, to get me fired from my recently secured low-paying temp job that is just barely keeping me alive, barely keeping me off the streets. So the people, my many enemies, who don't want to be exposed as the lying bigots and frauds that they are, who participated in the witch hunt against me at Yale that almost got me killed and destroyed my life, who participated in the global, defamation campaign against me, who participated in the social media moral outrage mobs against me, who are the woke KKK, who basically subjected me to social death or suicide, knowing that thinking that I was a good target and a good victim, and because I'm someone without resources or power to fight back, because I'm traumatized and I have a vulnerability to suicide and mental health disabilities. So that's why they did this to me, and also because they saw me as a suitable sacrifice to the woke gods, because they saw me as a poor white trash loser nobody at Yale, who didn't deserve to be at Yale, because they thought I was beneath them. So there's just, and obviously a lot of people did it just for the moral outrage industry money, like Twitter race hustler Shaun, who played a major role in the Living or Not Being While Black hate crime hoax at Yale. And so basically, and it's not just like people are saying that this is really bad because it's the end of citizen journalism. But no, that's not what is happening on Twitter. This is not citizen journalism that is happening, and everyone knows that. And if you're trying to argue that this is the nail in the coffin of citizen journalism, you're just lying. You're just lying. Okay, because first of all, it's not just the journalists on Twitter, on social media, who are trying to mob private citizen nobodies to suicide and calling it social justice and pretending that they're actually helping black people or anyone by doing this for moral outrage industry money and gain. It's not just the so-called citizen journalists who are participating in this, which is destroying us. It's just like Tristan Harris says, trial by Twitter without due process it's destroying us. It's absolutely destroying us. It's destroying our egalitarian public space. It's destroying our legal system. It's destroying our constitutional principles of due process and equal protection. It's destroying us, okay? But it's not just these so-called, citizen journalists that have been participating in this. Everyone, pushing their Karen Gone Wild viral, so-called racism videos. And like, even if you do catch someone on iPhone, having like a bad day, and even if they do something that's pretty bad. Like, you are not helping anyone by driving private citizen nobodies to suicide. And stop pretending that you are. That's not journalism. That's not a legitimate news story. Okay? When some miscreant posts a TikTok video of her, little old white lady, busybody neighbor who doesn't like her Tigger flag, that's not a legitimate news story. And my point is this: it's not just these so-called citizen journalists that are all trying to make themselves into the next Twitter race hustler, the next Shaun Cain, to get their 15 minutes of fame and a few moral outrage industry dollars, and they don't care if they get someone killed or destroy an innocent person's life. It's not just these so-called citizen journalists who are participating in this, it's the fake news press, otherwise known as the so-called mainstream news media. CNN is doing this. CNN now is no better. CNN, MSNBC, Don Lemon, Joy Reid, they are Twitter race hustlers. Everybody's a there's no such thing as a journalist anymore, basically. There is no such thing as a journalist anymore. Everyone's a Twitter race hustler. Everyone's a Shaun Cain. And everyone's just trying to make the cheapest and easiest buck and incite the most outrage, because that makes the cheapest and easiest buck. And you need to pick a victim, a good victim, when you do this. So you need to pick a private citizen nobody. In particular, pick a white woman who've been demonized. And don't worry if you destroy the Living While Black movement in the process, because it's all just about making a few moral outrage industry dollars. It's all just about posting a TikTok video that gets you 10 million views of your little old white lady, busybody neighbor who doesn't like your Tigger flag. So, and Newsweek pretended that was a legitimate news story. Newsweek. So it's not just these so-called citizen journalists that are the Shaun Cains and the Twitter race hustlers. Everyone's a Twitter race hustler now. Joy Reid is a Twitter race hustler. The New York Times, they're Twitter race hustlers. They are Twitter race hustlers like Shaun Cain. They are no better than Shaun Cain. Shaun Cain is just as much a journalist as Don Lemon is on CNN, as Joy Reid is on MSNBC. Everybody's a Twitter race hustler now. There's no such thing as journalism anymore. Journalism is dead. There's no such thing as journalism anymore. You think the New York Times is above this? You think the New York Times is above this? The New York Times, in August 2019, front page news story of the New York Times, August 2019, said that what I did at Yale was the same as a white woman who pulled a gun on some black kids on her front lawn. Front page news story, August 2019. The New York Times has always known from the very beginning that the Living or Napping While Black incident at Yale was a hate crime hoax, and that I was and am a completely innocent Yale grad student and human and civil rights attorney and activist, lifelong. The New York Times, there's multiple reasons why they participated in this. They did it at the behest of the Yale president, Peter Salovey, of the Yale administration, of course. The Yale administration led the entire global defamation campaign against me, but everyone just fell in line. It was pretty obvious. And the news stories came out like before I even before I even really knew what had happened to me. The New York Times was already publishing a so-called fact-checked story on their front page about me before I even really knew what happened to me. You don't think this was all pre-planned? It was all pre-planned. It was all pre-planned. That first story that the New York Times published about me, that was written before May 8th, 2018. I would bet so much money on that fact. I would bet so much money on that. It was written before May 8th, 2018, at the behest of the Yale administration. It was so clear to me what happened to me now, in retrospect, in hindsight. But my point is, don't cry to me about this is the end of citizen journalism, which that was just on, what's his name? Is it Mike Solana or something like that? Or Mark Solana, Mike Solana, just wrote a piece on Barry Weiss's Substack, and Jordan Peterson posted it, that this is horrible. This is the end of citizen journalism. Are you kidding me? Are you? Is that supposed to be a joke? Is that supposed to be a joke? It's not the end of citizen journalism. Journalism was already dead. Journalists, non-citizen, journalists who allegedly work at the New York Times, they're no better. Jamel Bowie, Jane Coaston, Tressie McMillan Cotton, whatever her name is. I don't care. She's the worst. She is the woke KKK. There's no, journalism is dead. Everyone at the New York Times is a Twitter race hustler, no better than Shaun. So don't whine to me about citizen journalism, because everyone knows that what is happening on Twitter is obscene. It's just like Tristan Harris says, it's destroying us. It's destroying us. It's a gladiatorial. It's a gladiatorial sport. It's like being in the Roman Colosseum, and it's just about, throwing the white women with mental health disabilities in front of the lions. That journalism is dead. It doesn't exist anymore. And the New York Times is no better. The New York Times is participating in this just as much as anyone else. The New York Times published 2 front page super fun and funny games at the end of 2018. One starring Niecy Nash, that were games out of trying to get me killed and destroy my life. So don't talk to me about, this is the end of citizen journalism. There is no such thing as citizen journalism. There's no such thing as journalism. The New York Times is no better than Shaun. Everyone is a Twitter race hustler now. And everyone's trying to mob a private citizen nobody to suicide for moral outrage industry, money and gain. That's what is happening. And it's Tristan Harris is right. It's destroying us. Okay? Here's the thing I'm worried about. Having happen. Because obviously I've been banned from Twitter. I was banned from Twitter for reporting egregious abuse and harassment against me. And the account that was tweeting as me and still tweets as me and talks about me sucking the dicks of my Yale advisors keeps getting locked out of their account, but Twitter keeps letting them come back, right? And so what I'm concerned about is that, and obviously if Twitter had this policy in place 3.5 years ago, then my life wouldn't have been destroyed. And, I would, be able to support myself and survive and make a living. I'd probably be an academic somewhere, a philosophy of law professor at some university at this point. And anyway, so what I'm concerned about, what I'm worried about, because obviously, I have been banned, from Twitter, even though this policy is supposed to stop exactly what happened to me from happening to anyone else. But what I'm concerned about is that just like Twitter has been, being very partisan in terms of applying their terms of service and their disciplinary measures, that they're going to do the same thing with this policy. Like this policy will be used to protect anyone who is deemed woke, who is deemed a woke intersectional feminist, and who is deemed woke, and especially if you're a blue checkmark public figure. This policy, will be used to protect you, but it won't be used to protect me. So the thing that happened to me will keep happening to people like me. And I considered myself an SJW. I considered myself a social justice warrior. But I also considered myself, a civil libertarian, and I saw myself as, a reformer from within, which is part of the reason why I, was vilified and persecuted and cast out as a heretic and apostate, because I had, breached the inner sanctum, basically, the inner circle. So I had to be, cast out, as a heretic and apostate and destroyed. So that's my concern. Okay, I don't want this video to get too long, so I think I'm gonna wrap up. I think I'll just post this video for tonight. Tomorrow I'm gonna make a bunch of videos, a bunch of woke KKK alert videos. I'm gonna talk about Richard Painter, of course, USA Today. Again, I'm gonna talk about Yale professor Carolyn Roberts, who just wrote a ridiculous race-baiting dystopian fantasy as part of the Black trauma moral outrage industry. And I'm going to talk about these Black trauma moral outrage industry charlatans and frauds who are in the midst of the Jussie Smollett trial, are still, exploiting and debasing the memory of Ahmaud Arbery and exploiting his lynching to push Living While Black race and hate crime hoaxes for moral outrage industry money. And they don't care if they destroy the Living While Black movement, and they don't care if they get innocent people killed, okay? And so Twitter needs to use this policy to protect people like me too. Innocent people who don't have the power to fight back, and especially vulnerable people with mental health disabilities, a vulnerability to suicide. No one is helping anyone by mobbing private citizen nobodies to suicide for money, okay? That is not a career. That is not social justice. That is not journalism, citizen or otherwise. We are destroying ourselves. We're destroying our society, okay? We need to stop. Everyone has to stop, because literally this is what we're doing to ourselves is apocalyptic. Seriously, we're just destroying ourselves, and this is going to be the end of our civilization. And I don't think that's hyperbole. I don't think I'm being histrionic or maudlin by saying that. It's that serious. What we're doing to ourselves, we're destroying ourselves. It's that serious. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I will have all of my fundraising links below, links to my blog posts, and I love you all so much, okay? Please support me. We have to end cancel culture. We have to end trial by Twitter. We have to end the woke KKK. We have to restore due process and equal protection and our sanity. We're in this moment of mass cultural insanity, and I really feel like, I hope that this policy that Twitter is implementing is because they see that we're going over the edge of the cliff. All of us together. It doesn't matter whether you're woke or anti-woke, left or right, wherever you are on the political spectrum, it doesn't matter. We're all going over that cliff together. And I just hope and pray that Twitter's implementing this policy and that they're going to enforce it fairly and in a nonpartisan manner. And I hope they're doing this because they see, just like Tristan Harris says, that we are all going over a cliff together. Okay? We're destroying ourselves. I just want so much for people to understand that. Okay, I love you all so much. All right. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.